Thank you so much for that introduction, Lauren. Greetings, people of Earth. My work as an astrobiofuturist is rooted in me studying nature in order to design future experiences for Earth as well as for space. And this work allows me to study a lot of really amazing creatures from all across this planet and really understand a lot of the value that they provide us in terms of being able to innovate and create new possibilities. Like many of you all, this work was impacted as a result of COVID-19 and the resulting pandemic. But it did provide me with one great blessing, one great opportunity, and that was to actually spend more time with my daughter. So this is my daughter, Lexi. She's 6 years old. And when it was safe, what we would do is we'd actually go down to Laguna Beach here in California, and Lexi loves to wait till the water has receded and quickly go and dig in the sand for these tiny little crustaceans called sand crabs. And there's this quote that a lot of my work is rooted in from Albert Einstein, which says, look deep into nature and then you'll understand everything better. And this is only amplified when you do this deep looking through the eyes of a 6-year-old girl. And so what I wanted to do was just share with you all a couple of insights that we've had from our time playing in the sand. And so what we discovered was that this place where we were finding these little sand crabs is referred to as the intertidal zone. And the intertidal zone is actually a place where the ocean meets land between high and low tides, which means that this intertidal zone is actually a place of great intersectionality, and it's also a place of great variation and transition. And it's not just the sandy beach area where we live. Intertidal zones can also be found along rocky shores along the ocean. So as we were exploring this place, one of the interesting things about the intertidal zone is the variation of change between high and low tides. So during high tide, there's a lot of water that's present, which means there's a lot of access to resources. Everything has the ability to have a sense of distribution because the water is present and it carries all of these different organisms that things living here need to survive. But as the tide begins to change into low tide, the water starts to recede. A lot of the organisms and thus the resources dry up and are no longer available. So there's a sense of scarcity here. In addition to that, there's also the change in temperature of the environment that these animals that were once submerged now have to adapt to. There's also this additional X factor that comes into play that is the waves of the ocean themselves. And it was at this moment of looking out into the water and seeing the waves that I began to understand a lot of the parallels and I really began to understand the fact that we've been living in the intertidal zone over these last several months. And it was understanding that the waves are actually the X factor in the intertidal zone. Regardless of whether it's high tide or low tide, the waves are the agent of change in this place. And so there was a couple of things that, as Jeff Goldblum likes to say, life finds a way. And so there's a couple of organisms that, despite the upheaval that comes from the waves, despite the impact that the waves have and how they can change things dynamically in an instant, there are a couple of organisms that are able to live within the intertidal zone and thus are able to thrive that I wanted to share with you. Now, in studying this place, I realized that there's some of you all who are tiny little upstarts like the sand crabs. There's some of you all who are a little bit more established. You're a little bit further out into the depths of water like seaweed. And then there's some of you all who are well planted, well established and secure, even amongst all of the change and chaos that comes from the change in tides and also the unknown of the waves, like these mussels. And so just to dive in a little bit deeper into some of those thoughts and to share with you all some ideas around how to adapt in these changing times, I wanted to focus just a little bit more on these. So for those of you all who are sand crabs, the interesting thing about being nimble and small is having the opportunity to quickly adapt, having the opportunity to ride the wave, if you will, a little bit. But the interesting thing that the sand crab does is that it knows when it needs to ride the wave and when it needs to secure itself and fortify its position and its location. And the most interesting thing for me about the sand crab is not only will it fortify itself, but it does it by backing up into the sand and facing the waves head on. But not only doing that, it also extends out these little feelers, these little antennae that allow it to capture unforeseen opportunities and food that flows past it as the waves are rushing over it. So this idea of facing the wave, but not only facing it, also positioning yourself to capture unexpected opportunities and resources that might be flowing your way in the midst of all of this change and chaos is something to think about. The next group, those of you who are seaweed, what makes this organism so fascinating is the fact that it's anchors itself to one substrate, and it has these elements, these little air bladders that allow it to be buoyant. And so, for those of you who are seaweed, what are the things that you are focused on? What are the things that you're anchoring your business around? And also, what are the things that you have as part of your structure that will allow you to stay buoyant, but also be able to quickly and nimbly adapt in any direction while being upright? This is an organism that is able to produce while also being anchored in one focused area and focused position, and also being very dynamic simultaneously. And then for those of you all who are mussels, this is an organism that through a diversity of layers has been able to insulate itself from the brunt of change that comes with the waves. It's fixated in one position, and it literally shelters in place. These organisms, they close up, they create an airtight, watertight seal, so they're completely protected from whatever's happening in the outside world. But even though that these are established and structured organisms, periodically they will open up a little bit and allow the outside world to come in, and they'll filter out what doesn't work for them, what's not providing them nutrients and opportunities to grow. They'll filter it out, but every so often they'll open up just to make sure that they have an understanding of what's happening in the outside. And this provides them with opportunities to know when it's time for them to further open up and be flooded with more resources, or when to stay insulated and protected. So the other interesting thing that I want to focus on with the mussels is the mussels literally cling to each other. They have this kind of web shooter like material called byssal thread, and they literally cling, they shoot it out and they attach to other mussels. So there's this community that clings together. And as a result of that, the collection of mussels together create opportunities for the waves to pool water that serves as an additional resource for them as they stick and cling together. So for you all, what are the organizations, who are the people that you can cling to create new pockets of opportunity for you during these times of upheaval and great change? And so the message that I wanted to leave with you all is that the work that you're doing is inherently intertidal work. It is work that exists at this point of transition and change. And there are several ways that you can be as adaptable as possible and as that you need to be, even at the size and scale of organization that you are. And thank you so much for coming. I hope you all enjoy the rest of the conference, and I look forward to interacting with you all. Thank you. Have a great day.